I sit alone at a fancy restaurant. A glass of water my only company as other diners savor their meals. My mother-in-law, who invited herself along, takes a jab, saying, "You should be grateful for the water. The place is upscale, so it's supposed to taste amazing." I'm Chloe, 37, and I've been grinding away in sales since graduating college. My parents' constant nagging about marriage led me to reluctantly join a matchmaking service. Eventually, I married Ricky, who's 5 years younger, just as I thought this would satisfy my parents. We faced an unexpected challenge. Ricky's company collapsed due to the economic downturn. Thankfully, my job provides enough to keep us afloat, so I encouraged Ricky to stay home and handle the household until he found new work. Though his housework skills left much to be desired, I appreciated having someone at home while I covered the bills. I frequently work overtime, reworking sales materials to boost my bonuses. But Ricky shows no urgency to find a job. When I suggested part-time work, he dismissed it, claiming it wouldn't benefit his future. His irritation grew whenever I asked about his job search. While he's still receiving unemployment benefits, his endless job hunt leaves me increasingly anxious. Ricky began asking for money, apparently having burned through his savings on extravagant purchases like indoor exercise equipment and trending video games. His reckless spending habits now leave me as the sole financial provider. In exchange for managing the household, I cover most expenses of rent, utilities, groceries out of my paycheck. Yet Ricky complains about not receiving compensation for housework, demanding occasional bonuses. Frustrated, I respond, "I don't get an allowance either. I really can't give you more. You need to find a job, even part-time. We can't keep going like this." Our financial arguments end in stalemates. Eventually, Ricky's parents began providing financial support, straining my relationship with them. During a visit, my mother-in-law insists a woman should silently support her husband, earn more, and let her son be free. This advice only drives a deeper wedge between us. One evening, Ricky surprises me with a plan to dine out. His parents made reservations at a high-end restaurant, and Ricky cheerfully informs me he's booked a table for 4, including his parents. I hesitantly ask if he can afford such a splurge. Ricky avoids my gaze and begins to speak. "Actually, I've been secretly working part-time," Ricky admitted, looking somewhat uncomfortable. "It's just a short daytime shift, and I didn't know how to bring it up after our arguments about me working full-time. To make up for everything, I've booked this nice restaurant for us." I was touched by his gesture. "If that's the case, I'm happy to accept the invitation," I said. I had plenty of questions about his job, but Ricky said we'd discuss it over dinner, keeping the details vague. For the first time in a while, a cheerful subject lightened the mood between us. However, in a cozy private room at the restaurant, the real reason for the dinner would soon become clear, leaving me shaking with anger. From the moment we arrived, something felt off. The restaurant staff looked mildly surprised to see us and exchanged whispers with my mother-in-law, who led us to a private room with a forced smile. She directed everyone to their seats, as always placing me closest to the entrance, a family rule I followed without question. As the first dish was served, things started to feel even stranger. The waiter hesitated, looking uneasy as he entered the room. My mother-in-law waved her hand elegantly, saying, "He'll go first, then me, followed by our son. I'm excited to see the courses." The waiter proceeded to serve the dishes in that order: father-in-law, mother-in-law, Ricky. As they explained each course, I realized that my meal hadn't arrived. I decided to speak up once the waiter finished his explanations. "Excuse me, I haven't received my food yet," I said, noting that all I had was the water my mother-in-law had provided. "Water will be fine for her," she said dismissively. The waiter's eyes widened in surprise, but before he could respond, my mother-in-law interrupted with a laugh. "Oh, Flo, you're so bold. A daughter-in-law is practically a stranger in the family. You think it's acceptable to crash our family dinner and then demand a meal? Water is more than enough for someone as rude and clueless as you. And this is fancy water from a fancy restaurant, you should appreciate it." While I had no problem with just having water, this was beyond disrespectful. My mother-in-law then ushered the flustered waiter toward the door, adding insult to injury. "Charge $1,000 for that water. It's not every day you get to drink water at such a fine place. So consider it a bargain for your time in this lovely room. Take as long as you need until we're done eating." A surge of anger bubbled up inside me. I looked at Ricky, hoping he would intervene, but he continued eating without a word. My father-in-law, too, sipped his drink as if nothing was happening. It was clear to me now, they had planned to stick me with the bill from the start. I felt utterly defeated. I had been genuinely happy when Ricky got a part-time job and promised to treat me with his salary, but it was all a deception to lure me into this harassment. Frustration replaced my anger, and I decided it wasn't worth the fight. Fine, I said. I'll pay for the water and leave. Please enjoy your family time. As I left the room to settle the bill, their crude laughter echoed down the hallway. The observant waiter, noticing my departure, offered to prepare other dishes since he couldn't serve the pre-ordered meal. I thanked him but insisted I would only pay for the water and leave. He then informed me that the water was complimentary, so I promptly exited the restaurant. Ricky's behavior had cemented my decision to divorce him. He had been jobless for months, barely attending interviews. When he realized there was no more money to be had, he conspired with his parents to shift the blame onto me. The harassment I endured that night was the final straw. I no longer felt any affection for him and knew I couldn't stay married to him. Upon returning home, I began packing with the intention of leaving everything behind. I was determined to start a new life free of Ricky. Our home was cluttered with his hobbies, and I didn't have much of my own. Since Ricky's business failed, I had been saving every penny, uncertain of how long our financial strain would last. I grabbed the large suitcase I had used for college travels and headed to a hotel for the night. The next morning, I felt incredibly refreshed as I enjoyed a hotel breakfast before heading to work. It had been ages since I had savored a meal like this. I usually made do with a slice of toast due to my tight budget. I was impressed with the improved quality of hotel services. On my way to work, I stopped by the city office to pick up divorce papers from the after-hours window. Although only my part was filled out, my spirits were surprisingly high. It seemed that the decision to divorce had revealed just how unhappy I had been in the marriage. Shortly after arriving at the office and starting work, I noticed a commotion in the neighboring department. As I chatted with a colleague, the noise grew louder and closer until it reached our department. Hey, get out here. You think you can just run away because you didn't come home? Mom and Dad said they'll forgive you if you come out and apologize. I stood up, stunned. I couldn't believe Ricky and my in-laws were actually at the entrance of my office. Their faces grew even more hostile as they saw me, and they approached directly. My mother-in-law thrust the receipt from last night's dinner at me. I told you to pay $1,000 for the water, didn't I? You, the wife of my son, have set a trap for us. What a disgrace, my mother-in-law shouted, her voice echoing in the office. Ignoring the growing crowd around us, Ricky and my mother-in-law continued their verbal assault. My father-in-law, as usual, looked around with a disinterested expression, just like he had the previous night. I was stunned that they had gone so far, taking time off to harass me at my workplace. Despite their aggressive tactics, I had no intention of giving in. If I'm a stranger to your family, why should I pay for the meal? I won't tolerate harassment at my workplace. If you continue this disruption, I'll call the police. Realizing I wasn't going to back down, Ricky suddenly grabbed a computer monitor from a nearby desk. My mother-in-law, seeing this, picked up a phone and said, "We'll show you what happens when you defy us." She then slammed the monitor onto the floor. Screams and chaos erupted among the female staff as the room descended into disorder. While I gathered my courage, Ricky and my mother-in-law began throwing objects with flushed faces. My father-in-law finally spoke up. If Chloe had just paid up, none of this would have happened. Sorry for the trouble. She can clean this mess up, he said with a chuckle, attempting to downplay the situation. His demeanor only highlighted the absurdity of the scene. People began to distance themselves from him, avoiding any contact. Realizing the severity of the situation, I shouted at Ricky and his family to stop the chaos. Trying to reason with them felt futile, like talking to a wall. Just as I desperately grabbed Ricky's arm to make him listen, police officers burst into the room. Someone from the neighboring department had called them after witnessing the mayhem. Ricky glared at me. "You called the cops," he yelled, and in a fit of rage, punched me in the face. Instantly, 3 officers tackled him to the ground. It felt like a scene straight out of a drama as they arrested him for assault. Later that day, the company's CEO, Ricky's parents, and I ended up at the police station. The company filed a report for the damaged property, and I consulted a lawyer about the ongoing harassment, proving some aspects. like the incident at the restaurant and Ricky's financial negligence, was challenging. My lawyer suggested settling. The negotiations became complicated when Ricky hired his own lawyer. Eventually, we agreed on a divorce with no asset division and a payment for emotional distress due to Ricky's workplace violence. The assault case concluded in just 2 months, and I received compensation for my injuries. Legal action for the company damages would have been costly and time-consuming, so the company opted for a large settlement to avoid negative attention. Ricky was left with a criminal record, and both he and his parents owed substantial amounts to me and the company. They managed to cover the debts with their retirement funds, leaving them nearly broke. Desperate, Ricky's parents arranged for him to return home and secured him a job at another company through family connections. However, it didn't last long. The new employer discovered the connection to my company, and the CEO, concerned about the company's reputation, encouraged Ricky to resign. Rumors about his volatile behavior spread quickly, making him uncomfortable and leading to his departure. Ricky moved back home and quit his new job, causing neighborhood rumors that eventually reached my mother's workplace. The story of his criminal past and the harassment scandal became well known. As a result, both of my in-laws faced criticism and were fired from their jobs, despite being close to retirement. They reached out for help through a lawyer, but I told them I no longer needed any reports. I realized there was no need to rush into marriage. And thankfully, my parents have stopped pushing me to get married. They might feel guilty about the incident, but they haven't mentioned it since. I feel for my parents, but it's for the best. Now, I'm focusing on contributing to my company, enjoying new projects, and experiencing the most fulfilling days of my life.